Let's get divorced, Julian. I calmly handed over the signed agreement. He didn't even look up, as if listening to the weather forecast. Reason? I don't love you anymore. He finally raised his eyes, and those blue eyes that once made me infatuated were now as cold as frost. Evelyn, don't be ridiculous. Damien needs a complete family. I laughed so hard that tears almost came out. A complete family? A husband who treats me like nothing? A son who hits me with a golf ball? He frowned. Damien is still young. Young? 14 years old is old enough for him to know what it means to hit his biological mother in the back of the head with a golf club. The back of my head throbbed, and warm liquid flowed down my neck. I staggered back and saw my son, Damien, standing on the second-floor terrace, holding a golf club in his hand, with his usual indifference on his face. Downstairs, my husband Julian Thorne, in a suit and leather shoes, leaned against the car door, watching coldly. It was as if I wasn't his wife of 15 years, not the one who got hit by the ball, but just an unsightly piece of trash on the side of the road. Blood blurred my vision and soaked through the last trace of warmth in my heart. Just half an hour ago, I put the signed divorce agreement in front of him. Let's get a divorce, Julian. He didn't even look up immediately, just flipped through the financial magazine in his hand. Reason? I don't love you anymore. And, I can't stand it anymore. He finally looked up. Those blue eyes that once captivated me, now as cold as a Siberian cold current. Evelyn, put away your little temper. Damien needs a complete home. A complete home? I laughed, my chest hurting from the laughter. A husband who treats me like air. A son who can casually smash a golf ball into his mother's head? Is this what you call complete? He frowned, his tone with the unquestionable authority of a superior. Damien is just a child. He doesn't understand. 14 years old, tall enough, strong enough for him to clearly know what consequences might result from hitting someone's head with a hard golf ball. He doesn't not understand. He just doesn't treat me like a person, just like his father. I didn't argue anymore, turned around and dragged my small suitcase, which had been packed long ago, containing only a few of my own old clothes and necessities. This home, to which I dedicated 15 years of my youth, contained very little that belonged to me. I walked to the door, but before I could step out, I was struck by this sudden blow. Julian and Damien, father and son, one downstairs and one upstairs, both watched me bleed indifferently. Not a word of concern, not a hint of emotion. I covered my wound, and waves of dizziness washed over me. Straightening my back, I walked out of this prison step by step. Behind me, there was no attempt to stop me, no calling out, only the sound of the engine starting. Julian drove away, probably rushing to the company, or to see his first love, Stella Vance. I went to the hospital alone for stitches and bandaging. The doctor looked at my wound, hesitated to speak, and finally just sighed. Madam, please be careful. I thanked him and left with the payment slip. Stepping out of the hospital, the sunlight was blinding. I hailed a taxi and gave the address of my grandmother's house. That was the only place that could make me feel warm. When my grandmother saw the gauze on my forehead, tears welled up in her eyes immediately, and she held me, repeating, "My dear child, what happened? Who did this to you?" Leaning against my grandmother's warm embrace, the strength I had accumulated along the way instantly collapsed, and tears silently streamed down. At my grandmother's house, I slept a deep, heavy sleep. In my dream, all I saw was Damien as a child, softly and sweetly calling me mommy, hugging my neck and acting spoiled, saying in a baby voice, "Mommy is the best person in the world." But when did he start to change? Probably after Stella returned to China. Julian's first love, whom he cherished deeply, became his chief secretary. She began to frequently visit our home, bringing Damien the latest game consoles, taking him to high-end restaurants, and subtly recounting Julian's glory and deep affection in his youth. Damien's gaze towards me gradually changed from dependence to dislike, and finally to complete indifference, even disgust. He started calling her Aunt Stella. Later, in front of outsiders, he would even smile and introduce, "This is Stella, my dad's girlfriend. This is Evelyn, our family's cooking aunt." My heart felt like it was being repeatedly cut with a dull knife. When I woke up, my grandmother had already prepared a light dinner. Seeing Grandma's worried eyes, I forced myself to cheer up. "Grandma, I'm fine. I've decided to get a divorce." Grandma was stunned for a moment. Then she took my hand and said, "Good riddance, my dear. We won't put up with that nonsense. Grandma will take care of you." The phone rang untimely. It was Julian. "Where's my gray cashmere sweater?" His voice still had that taken-for-granted commanding tone. I closed my eyes and gave the exact location. Left cloakroom, third row, hanging next to the blue suit. After a pause, I added, "It goes well with the silver-gray tie you just bought yesterday. This is a habit ingrained in my bones for the 15 years I've been Mrs. Thorne." There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the phone, seemingly a bit surprised. Not bad taste. Then, he changed the subject. "Next week is our 15th wedding anniversary. I asked my assistant to order jewelry for you, and when the time comes..." "No need, Julian," I interrupted him. "Keep it for Stella. She should like it." Mentioning Stella, his tone instantly turned cold, with a hint of sarcasm. "Evelyn, don't forget your place. Do you think you can compare to Stella?" "Yes, I can't compare," I admitted frankly. "I'm not as young and beautiful as she is. I don't have her prestigious family background, and I'm not as good at pleasing you. So, Julian, let's get divorced. Have Stella arrange a time, and we'll go through the formalities as soon as possible." He seemed infuriated by my calmness. I didn't give him a chance to explode and hung up the phone directly. Not 2 days later, I received a call from Damien's school. The counselor's tone was anxious, saying that Damien had gotten into a fight with a classmate at school because someone was talking about his parents' impending divorce. I rushed to school. In the counselor's office, Damien was staring defiantly at the boy opposite him, who was also bruised, a smirk playing on his lips. "Julian hasn't arrived yet." The counselor sighed in relief when he saw me. "Mrs. Thorne, I'm glad you're here. Look at this." I walked up to Damien, his neck stiff, not even looking at me. I turned on the speakerphone and dialed Julian's number. It rang a few times before he answered. The background noise was a bit noisy. "What is it?" "I'm in a meeting, Julian," I said, not loudly, but clearly enough. "Just to let you know, Damien got into a fight at school because someone said we were getting divorced." I paused, watching Damien's profile stiffen instantly, and said, word by word, "I'm already at the school. And I've already told the counselor that the divorce is real and you'll have custody. In the future, for anything regarding Damien, please contact you directly or your secretary, Stella." After saying that, I turned to Damien, who was looking at me in disbelief. I met his gaze and told him clearly, "Damien Thorne, from today onwards, our relationship as mother and son is over. Take care of yourself." Then, I hung up the phone, ignored the shocked expression of the counselor and Damien's pale face, and turned to leave the office. Stepping out of the school gate, the sun was just right. On the weekend, I accompanied my goddaughter Chloe to an equestrian competition. Chloe is my best friend's daughter. Her friend died early, so I love her like my own daughter. Unexpectedly, I ran into Julian and Stella at the edge of the arena. They were clearly here to watch the competition, probably because Damien was participating. What a small world. Literally, enemies always meet on a narrow road. I pretended not to see them and focused on tidying up Chloe's riding gear, but Julian took the initiative to come over. With his usual arrogance, "Evelyn, you really are a persistent ghost." I couldn't be bothered with him, so I smiled gently at Chloe and said, "Honey, relax and just do your best." Julian's face darkened. "We're not divorced yet. Watch your words and actions, and keep your distance." "We?" I said as if I had heard a joke. "Julian Thorne, do I need to remind you? Your son shattered this we with his own hands. Now, please leave and don't bother us." His face turned very ugly. At this moment, a cry of surprise came from the arena. Damien fell off his horse while crossing an obstacle, and seemed to be seriously injured. Julian's face changed, and he rushed over immediately. Stella also hurried to follow. I stood there, watching Chloe steadily complete all the movements and take first place in the group. "Godmother, I won." Chloe ran towards me excitedly. I smiled and opened my arms to hug her. "My baby is amazing." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Julian holding Damien, anxiously walking off the field. Damien's gaze went over his father's shoulder, looking at me with a hint of fragile appeal in his eyes. Julian also saw us and shouted at me sternly, "Evelyn, what are you standing there for? Didn't you see Damien is injured? Come over and help." His tone was as if I were still an appendage to be summoned and dismissed at will. I acted as if I hadn't heard, took Chloe's hand, and said with a smile, "Let's go. Godmother will take you out for a feast to celebrate." We walked straight past them, completely ignoring Damien's painful and puzzled gaze. and Julian's almost fiery glare. I hesitated for a moment, but answered it anyway. We hadn't walked far from the stadium when Julian's phone call caught up with us. "Evelyn, what exactly do you want?" he roared. "Talk about divorce." My tone was calm. "Let's talk at the hospital, and take a look at your son while we're at it." Damien's suppressed sobs and Julian's roar came from the other end of the phone. At the hospital, Damien was lying in bed with a cast on his leg and a pale face. Stella was softly comforting him by his side. Seeing me, Julian immediately accused, "Couldn't you be faster? Damien needs care." I didn't look at Damien. I said directly to Julian, "Did you bring the divorce agreement? Let's sign it." "You don't care about Damien's injuries at all?" Julian asked in disbelief. "Care?" I laughed. "When he hit me with a golf ball, did you care about my injuries? When he publicly humiliated me by calling me a cooking auntie, did any of you say a word for me?" "Julian, put away your hypocritical rhetoric. Doesn't he still have you, his good father, and Stella, the mother-to-be?" Damien heard this, and suddenly looked up at me, his eyes filled with panic. Julian's face was ashen. "Evelyn, what exactly do you want in order to take care of Damien? Name your price." "As long as I can do it. My condition is an immediate divorce," I said decisively. "Take care of Damien? You can hire a caregiver, or let Stella do it. Isn't she always good at playing that role?" Julian trembled with anger. "What about your maternal love? Do you really want Damien to live in a single-parent family?" "Maternal love?" I looked at him as if he were a stranger. "My maternal love died the moment I was hit by that golf ball." "Single-parent family? Julian, don't you have Stella by your side? Hasn't Damien always been looking forward to Stella becoming your real wife, becoming his new mother? Grant him his wish." Julian stared at me intently. "Are you so willing to hear Damien call someone else mom?" 100 times willing," I answered resolutely, my voice not loud, but firm. "Didn't Stella return to China 3 years ago? In these 3 years, how did she gradually replace my position, get close to Damien, and make him increasingly estranged from me? Don't you know? Damien is even closer to her than he is to me, his own mother. Are you blind?" Julian's lips moved, but he couldn't say a word in rebuttal. I issued an ultimatum: next Monday, at 9 a.m., at the entrance of City Hall. If you come, we'll take care of the formalities. If you don't come, my lawyer will contact you. We'll see you in court then. Having said that, I didn't look at either father or son again, and turned to leave the hospital room. After leaving the hospital, I turned off my phone. The next few days were unusually quiet. At 9 o'clock on Monday morning, I showed up at the City Hall gate on time. The world is quiet. After waiting for half an hour, Julian didn't show up. As expected, I went directly to the law firm, officially hired a lawyer, and filed for divorce. Dividing the property? I only want the old house my grandmother left me before the marriage, as well as some personal savings and belongings. As for the shares of Thorne Industries, I don't want any of the jewelry, mansions, or luxury cars that Julian gave me. I just want to quickly and completely disassociate myself from this father and son. After dealing with the lawyer's affairs, I returned to my grandma's home in the countryside. Together with Grandma and Chloe, I spent a few days of rare pastoral life. In Grandma's garden, the melons and fruits are fragrant. Chloe is on summer vacation and follows me around every day, chirping like a happy little bird. Looking at her innocent smile, I feel the wounds in my heart slowly healing. The peaceful days didn't last long before they were broken. That afternoon, Chloe and I were in the yard watering the blueberries when we suddenly heard a car engine outside the gate. A black Bentley pulled up. The car door opened, and Julian helped Damien, who was leaning on a crutch and had a cast on his leg, out of the car. Damien was also dragging a suitcase that was neither too big nor too small. I frowned and looked at them. "What are you here for?" I asked Damien, my tone icy. Damien avoided my gaze and said softly, "Dad said, you need someone to take care of you." How ridiculous. I looked at him. "Do I need to take care of you? Or do you want me to take care of you?" Damien's face flushed red, and he finally admitted in a low voice, "I wanted to come." Wanted to come? I walked up to him, looking down at him. "Damien Thorne, do I need to emphasize this to you again? Your father and I have already separated. The court will soon rule for divorce, and your custody will go to him. You, him, and Stella, you are a family." Damien suddenly looked up, his eyes full of panic and confusion. But legally, you are still my mother." "Mom?" I sneered, my voice suddenly rising. "You're worthy to call me Mom? Damien, have you forgotten? At your school's annual awards ceremony last year, when you gave a speech as an outstanding student representative, how did you introduce me? Damien's face turned pale instantly. I said it for him. You pointed at me under the stage in front of the entire school and said, that is Evelyn, our family's cook and nanny. Then, you affectionately took Stella's hand and said to everyone with a smile, this is my goddess, my beloved Aunt Stella. Have you forgotten what you said back then? You said that I, a graduate of an agricultural college, embarrassed you. You said that the food I made had a earthy taste. You said that the clothes I wore looked like a country bumpkin. Damien Thorne, in your heart, I've long ceased to be your mother. In your and your father's eyes, I'm nothing more than a free servant to be used and humiliated at will. So, now, I pointed to the courtyard gate, enunciating each word, get out immediately, right now, with your belongings. This is my home, and I don't welcome irrelevant idlers like you. Damien's body swayed, his eyes instantly reddened, his lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a word. Get out, I shouted sharply. He stood there, unmoving, and tears fell. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of ease I had never felt before. I lost my patience, stepped forward, grabbed his arm, and dragged him forcefully out of the courtyard gate. He had an injury on his leg and couldn't stand steadily, and he staggered as I dragged him. Mom, my leg, it hurts, he cried. I turned a deaf ear and dragged him out of the courtyard, then threw his suitcase out as well. With a thump, the suitcase hit the ground, making a dull sound. Just then, Julien got out of the car and quickly stepped forward to support the faltering Damien. He looked at me with a complex expression, with a hint of pleading. Evelyn, let Damien stay. He's just a child. He's been having nightmares these past few days, saying he misses you. Missing me? I sneered. Missing the punching bag that you could beat, scold, and humiliate at will, right? My refusal was firm. Damien saw Chloe standing behind me and suddenly became agitated, pointing at Chloe and questioning me. Why can she live here? I am your own son. Why can she stay and I can't? I glanced at him contemptuously, then gently stroked Chloe's head. Because she is my baby. I looked at Damien, my eyes cold, and said clearly, and you, Damien Thorne, what are you? I ll say it one last time. My voice was devoid of warmth. I don't want you anymore. Wah. Damien finally broke down and cried, crying heart-wrenchingly. Julien hugged him, his eyes filled with incomprehension and a hint of hurt. Evelyn, how can you be so heartless? Heartless? Compared to what those father and son did to me, this bit of heartlessness is nothing. I couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with them anymore. Turned around and slammed the courtyard door shut with a bang, shutting out the cries and accusations of the father and son. That night, it started to rain heavily. There was lightning and thunder, and wind and rain were raging. Julien and Damien didn't leave. They stayed outside the gate, with the car lights on. Grandma couldn't bear it and wanted to take a quilt out to them. I stopped him. Grandma, they're not worth it. Grandma looked at my firm eyes, finally sighed, and put down the quilt. The next morning, the rain stopped. Julien knocked on the courtyard door, his voice hoarse and tired. Evelyn, open the door. Damien has a high fever and is vomiting. Please, take him to the hospital. I lay in bed, turned over, found my earplugs, put them in, and continued to sleep. When I woke up at noon, the courtyard door was empty. That Bentley and that eyesore of a father and son were finally gone. I woke up in a cheerful mood and played water guns with Chloe in the yard. In the sunlight, Chloe's laughter was crisp and melodious. This is what life should be like. When I dropped Chloe off at school, she excitedly showed off to her classmates. My godmother is awesome. She is a PhD from the Agricultural University. That blueberry in our yard that's as big as a small watermelon is a new variety cultivated by my godmother. The classmate looked at me with admiration. I smiled and ruffled Chloe's hair. Agricultural University PhD. Yeah, I used to be someone with dreams. I love the land, I love plants, and I dream of cultivating more and better crop varieties. However, for Julien, for that so-called complete family, I gave up my almost completed doctoral studies, put away all my research materials, and willingly became a full-time housewife. What promises did Julien make in the beginning? He said, Evelyn, I'm sorry to inconvenience you. When Damien is older, I will definitely support you to continue your studies and do what you want to do. But what happened later? The Thornes, including Julien, all looked down on my profession as undignified. Damien even felt that having a mother who studied farming was a disgrace to him. My sacrifice was worthless in their eyes. It even became their reason to ridicule and belittle me. The phone rang again. It was Julian. I directly blocked his number. My lawyer will handle everything. A few days later, a typhoon passed through, and the old house in the countryside was damaged. I tidied up the old things in the attic with my grandmother. In a dusty wooden box, I accidentally found an old rabbit doll. It was Damien's favorite when he was little. The rabbit's ear fell off, and there are several stitched marks on its body. This was handmade by my mother, who is also Damien's maternal grandmother. I held the rabbit doll, lost in thought. Suddenly, a deep voice came from behind me. Evelyn. I turned my head sharply and saw Julian standing at the entrance of the attic, soaked, his hair disheveled, his face with an unprecedented haggardness and panic. How did you get in? I asked sternly, subconsciously hiding the rabbit doll behind me. This is a private residence. He is trespassing. The door was blown open by the wind. Julian's voice was a little hoarse. He took a few steps forward, his eyes fixed on me. Evelyn, let me explain. The last time at the hotel was a misunderstanding. I really was meeting with an important client. Stella has already been fired by me, he said eagerly. Evelyn, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. What are you talking about? I interrupted him calmly. Hotel? What hotel? What does Stella being fired have to do with me? I really don't know what hotel incident he's talking about, but it doesn't matter anymore. I looked at him and said calmly, Julian, I had already prepared the divorce agreement before the hotel misunderstanding you mentioned happened. The color drained from his face instantly, as if all his strength had been sapped away, and he staggered. No, impossible, he muttered to himself, his eyes filled with despair. Evelyn, you can't do this to me. He lunged forward and grabbed my wrist with astonishing force. Evelyn, please, give me one more chance. His voice was choked with sobs, and his once proud blue eyes were now filled with pleading and fear. I have never begged anyone in my life. Please, don't leave me, don't leave this home. Home? I shook off his hand with force, took a step back, and created distance. Julian Thorne. I looked at him and told him clearly, I don't love you anymore, not even a little bit. Having said that, I turned around, took the rabbit doll, and walked down from the attic. Julian didn't chase after me. He seemed frozen in place, lost and dejected. I had just walked into the yard when I saw Damien standing under the eaves, staring blankly at the rabbit doll in my hand. Rabbit, it's my rabbit, he suddenly cried. Grandma sewed it for me. I lost it. You didn't lose it. I corrected him coldly. My mother, your grandmother, sewed it, when you were 8 years old, because Stella said, /boys still play with such sissy things, / you deliberately tore it up in front of me and threw it in the trash. I will always remember that day. I braved the heavy rain and rummaged through the garbage dump for so long to find this broken doll. I washed it little by little, dried it, and clumsily sewed it back together. It was also that day that I hit his butt for the first and only time. From that day on, he never called me mommy again. Give it back to me, Damien cried, reaching out for the bunny doll. Please, Mom, I need it. I can't sleep at night. Mom? I felt like I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. Seeing his hand reaching out, I suddenly used force and pushed him. He had a leg injury and was unsteady, and I pushed him backward to the ground. You can set up paid features here. Don't touch it. I shouted sharply. This is my mother's relic. You don't deserve to touch it. Just then, a sharp female voice rang out. Evelyn, are you crazy? How could you push Damien? He's still a child, and his leg is injured. Stella appeared at the gate at some point. Seeing Damien on the ground, she rushed over immediately and angrily scolded me. I know Julian doesn't want you anymore, and you're bitter, but you can't take your anger out on a child. You vicious woman. I looked at her and suddenly laughed. Then, in front of Julian, who had walked to the door at some point, I raised my hand and slapped Stella twice. Hard. Slap. Slap. Stella was stunned by the hit, covering her face, looking at me in disbelief. After realizing what happened, she screamed and tried to pounce on me to fight back, but Julian grabbed her around the waist. Julian Thorne, let go of me. This crazy woman hit me. Stella struggled frantically, roaring. Julian's face was terribly gloomy. He held Stella tightly, his voice icy cold. I told you a long time ago. You were fired. It has nothing to do with Evelyn. Now, get out of here immediately. What? Stella looked at Julian in disbelief. You fired me, for this woman? She looked at me again, her eyes vicious. What kind of bewitching potion did you give her? She hit me. She pushed your son, Julian Thorne. Are you blind? A trembling voice sounded. Damien leaned against the wall and struggled to stand up. He looked at Stella, then at Julian, and finally his gaze fell on me, and for the first time, he spoke to defend me. It was my own careless fall. His voice was small, but very clear. It has nothing to do with my mother. Stella completely broke down. She pointed at Julian, then at Damien, and hysterically yelled, You father and son are both bastards, blind bastards. After yelling, she ran away crying. Only the three of us were left in the yard, and the silent stillness. Julian and Damien both looked at me, hesitant to speak. I know what they're thinking. They thought Damien's defense just now would soften my heart. Julian took a deep breath, trying to ease the atmosphere. He pointed at Damien. Evelyn, look, Damien, he hasn't eaten all day, and he's still growing. Trying to impress me with food? I nodded. Wait. I turned and went back into the house. A faint glimmer of hope flashed in the eyes of both Julian and Damien. A few minutes later, I came out with a few slices of bread and a document. I handed the bread to Damien. Then, I put the document in his other hand. What is this? Damien asked, puzzled. A contract. I explained calmly. The voluntary severance of kinship and waiver of elderly care obligations agreement. You sign it, and legally, I will no longer be your mother, and you will no longer have the obligation to support me. I looked at him, my eyes without a trace of emotion. After all, I chose to abandon you. I can't both reject you and expect you to take care of me in my old age, which is unfair to you. Damien held the light document, but his hand was shaking violently. He suddenly looked up at me, his eyes as red as a rabbit's. No, don't. His voice choked, and suddenly he knelt down with a thump, his knees hitting the wet stone slab heavily, not even caring about the injury on his leg. Mom, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please don't break off the relationship with me. Please don't. He sobbed uncontrollably. I can't do anything. I can't match clothes. And I can't even order food. I can't live without you. Mom, please. Julian stood aside, his eyes hollow, as if his soul had been drawn out. Seeing that I was unmoved, Damien turned to Julian and cried, Dad, please help me. Didn't you say Mom would be soft-hearted? You lied to me. Please make Mom take me back. Hurry. Julian struggled for a long time, his face flashing with pain, regret, and unwillingness. Finally, he looked at me and repeated the first question he asked during our divorce negotiations. But his tone was no longer as cold and assertive as it had been then, only filled with humble pleading. Evelyn, Damien's custody, is mine. You have no objection, right? He paused, his voice strained. Take Damien back. I'm begging you. I looked at the painful and desperate eyes of the father and son, and my heart was as still as water. I turned around and closed the courtyard door again. This time, inside the door, Grandma was sitting under the light, wearing reading glasses, stitching and mending the tattered rabbit doll. 5 months later, the divorce procedures were finally completed. I'm going to school to pick up Chloe from school. Chloe sat in the passenger seat, eating ice cream and gossiping about the news at school. Godmother, do you know? Damien Thorne. Chloe glanced at me cautiously. He jumped off a building. My hand trembled almost imperceptibly, but I quickly steadied the steering wheel. I heard it's because his father, Julian, has been drinking heavily lately, always hitting and scolding him, and often arguing about company matters. Then he jumped from the second floor of their villa and is now in the ICU. I hummed an acknowledgement. Chloe observed my expression and asked softly, Godmother, are you all right? I turned my head and gave her a gentle smile. Godmother is fine. Life is long, and everyone makes mistakes and takes detours. But as long as we have people who love us protecting us, everything can start over. The car was moving forward smoothly, and the scenery outside the window was receding. Ahead lies a brand new road, and a future of infinite possibilities that belongs to me.